Welcome to On Trial, starring Mark Radulich, also starring Sean Comer. Hope you're ready, Hollywood, because you're on trial.
All rise. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Fudge presiding. This is On Trial, brought to you by the Radulich Broadcasting Network, affiliate of W2M, as we all know. And tonight, I am your prosecuting attorney, Mr. Mark Radulich, a mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified. And on the docket for prosecution tonight, Top Gun, 1986, I believe is the year. Top Gun 1986, yes, starring Tom Cruise, Val Kilmer, Kelly McGillis and her teeth, Anthony Edwards, Tom Skerritt, among others. And joining me to defend this classic cinema is the aviator himself, the man of 1,000 planes, the flyman, the Maverick, the Goose, David Wright. How do you do, sir?
My ego's writing checks my body can't cash.
You are dangerous.
You can be my wingman anytime.
Oh, thank you, Dave. I am the danger zone, as I've been told.
Yeah, Mark, would you say that we are heading into a zone of danger?
There's a highway straight to the danger zone. Dave, you have been, first of all, we plan to do this as soon as they announced Top Gun Maverick, and then Top Gun Maverick was in a competition with Morbius to see how many times it could be delayed. And so you have been waiting to talk about Top Gun. Can you tell us a little bit about your history with aviation and why Top Gun speaks to you, and why this was like a sort of a passion project for you to defend this movie tonight?
Yeah. So you mostly know me as the sci-fi guy or the anime guy, and the English stuff guy. I guess I wear that hat too. But
you're Canadian, therefore English.
Yeah, yeah, but the other big passion of my life, other than science fiction, would have to be aviation. I got the bug when I was a kid, and I've just, kept with it all my life. I did Air Cadets when I was in my teenage years, which is, for those of you that don't know, basically like Boy Scouts, but with sort of the help of the Air Force. Yeah, so like I wanted to be a fighter pilot when I was a kid. Unfortunately, my eyes weren't up to the vision standards for the Air Force, so that didn't happen, so I've had to just be a watcher from afar, becoming a armchair expert, I guess. Okay, you could say emphasis on armchair expert.
So you're big into jets. You're big into aviation. You say you're like an armchair expert and all of that. Big fan. Top Gun comes out. How old are you in 1986?
2.
Wow. Okay.
So I did not get to see it in theaters. I was busy working on other things at the time, like walking.
Sure. Yeah. No, I got it. My question to you: when did you see Top Gun? How'd you find it even?
I don't think I can ever really pinpoint that. It's just kind of something that's always been there as far as I'd known. Like it's actually for the longest time, I never actually sat down and watched the movie. It was always something I would catch on TV and see. Little bits of. When I was a kid, I actually got a lot more into Hot Shots because we had that on tape, and it's a silly comedy, which when you're a kid is a lot easier to watch. Whereas, for someone who's still a child, Top Gun, there's a lot of boring bits in it. If you're a kid.
Oh God, we're going to talk about that.
Yes, we will get to that. But yeah, it's always been sort of one of, like, if you are into fighter jets, Top Gun is the movie.
So like you're a little kid and you're when it comes on TV and you see this movie, these cool dudes flying, fast jets and doing all kinds of cool aerial maneuvers. You're like, this is it. This is my movie.
Kind of, yeah. That is. I mean, Top Gun has become like the public image of what it is like to be a fighter pilot.
Yeah,
it's not an accurate image, but darn if it isn't cool.
Okay. As the years have gone on, has your opinion about the movie changed at all? Is it because we talk to a lot of people in our little circle of podcast friends, and there are things that they hang on to from their childhood, and it's something that Robert and I talk about, lament, complain about, etc. That people look back, on the things they watched as a child, things they liked as a child with rose-colored glasses, nostalgia glasses, and artificially inflate the value of said thing, or how good it is. And sometimes people mistake thing they liked for quality. Inflate the quality is probably the phrase I should have used.
It's really bad for those that get into anime. Like the anime shows you start out liking, when you come back a few years later, like, oh wow, this actually wasn't that good.
Right. I don't want to go off topic, but like He-Man, we all loved it as a kid, and then you look back on it as an adult, and for some people it still stands up, but have they glommed onto something that gave them joy as a child and they don't want to give that up? Or is it really not holding up?
Yeah. Boy, is this animation cheap.
Yeah, things like that. So I am curious, as you become an adult, as you've watched the movie over and over, as you reflect on things and you learn about aircrafts, do you ever look at the movie and have a vastly different viewing experience than you did years before?
A lot of it comes from, again, being, actually, I wouldn't say expert. Let's go with armchair enthusiast. I think that's a lot more fair. Appropriate. Yeah. The more I learn about how, as best I can tell, again, not an actual fighter pilot, air combat works, and the F-14 itself and how those systems work, the more you start to notice the inaccuracies, and you're like, well, that wouldn't have been right. That that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Just little things like when Goose is looking at the radar in the back, it's doing a 360-degree sweep all around the aircraft. That works for the ships and on the ground, but in a fighter, the radar's in the nose, so it only looks like 120 degrees in front of the plane, just sweeping back and forth. So that's not realistic. But again, the public perception of what the radar looks like is that. It doesn't ruin the movie, but you see it as well, that's not right. That's not the correct display. But then again, this is the movie was made back when the F-14 was still in service, so they probably didn't want to show all the little details to the
show the enemy that might be watching and say, "Oh, I don't know, Libya." How the secret jets work.
Yeah, well, the enemy wouldn't even lend any of their aircraft for filming, so I like the MiG-28 does not exist. It's a T-38 trainer aircraft that's been painted up to look vaguely Russian, but that's what you got to do.
All right, so let's talk about the notes for this. So the primary inspiration for the film was the article "Top Guns" by Yuhid Yone from the May 1983 issue of California Magazine. Have you ever read it? Have you ever gone to find it on Google and actually read the article that inspired this? Or it exists, but
this is my first time hearing about this, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I've read this a few times and as I was reading about the film, which featured aerial photography by then Lieutenant Commander Charles Heater Heatley. The article detailed the life of fighter pilots of Naval Air Station Miramar in San Diego, self-nicknamed as Fighter Town, USA. Numerous screenwriters allegedly turned down the project. Bruckheimer and Simpson went on to hire Jim Cash and Jack Epps Jr. to write and direct the first draft. The research methods by Epps included attendance at several declassified Top Gun classes at Miramar and gaining experience by being flown in an F-14. The first draft failed to impress Bruckheimer and Simpson and is considered to be very different from the final product in numerous ways. I'll bet. Tony Scott was hired on to direct on the strength of a commercial he had done for the Swedish automaker Saab in the early 1980s, where a Saab 900 Turbo was shown racing a Saab 37 vegan fighter jet. Actor Matthew Modine turned down the role of Pete Mitchell. That went to Tom Cruise because he felt the film's pro-military stance went against his politics. Makes sense. Julianne Phillips was in consideration for the role of Charlie and had been scheduled to perform a screen test opposite Tom Cruise. The producers wanted the assistance of U.S. Navy in production of the film. The Navy was influential in relation to the script approval, which resulted in changes being made. The opening dogfight was moved to the international waters as opposed to Cuba. The language was toned down, and a scene that involved a crash on the deck of an aircraft carrier was also scrapped. Maverick's love interest was also changed from a female enlisted member of the Navy to a civilian contractor with the Navy.
That makes it so much better.
Yeah, really. To a civilian contractor with the Navy due to the U.S. military's prohibition of fraternization between officers and enlisted personnel. The Charlie character also replaced an aerobics instructor from an early draft as a love interest for Maverick after producers were introduced to Christine Legs Fox, a civilian mathematician employed by the Center for Naval Analysis, as a specialist in maritime.
Wait, are you saying beautiful women can also be intelligent?
Not that I've ever seen, but apparently this movie seems to think so. That's not true. I kid. Developing tactics for aircraft carrier defense. Rear Admiral Pete Viper Pettigrew, a former Navy aviator, Vietnam War veteran, and Top Gun instructor, served as a technical advisor on the film, and also
I believe this call sign is now Diaper.
Yeah.
A funny story about that.
Hang on. And also makes a cameo appearance in the film as a colleague of Charlie's. Okay, so what's your funny story?
So I words, David. So I listen from time to time to the Fighter Pilot podcast, which is a podcast done by now retired, naval aviators like Hornet pilots, and they've done some interviews with people from Top Gun, and I think the host Vincent Aiello, he is a Top Gun graduate himself, but they actually interviewed Viper, and they were talking about call signs, and the first thing you need to know about call signs is they are nothing like you see in Top Gun. Nobody gets cool call signs like Maverick, Iceman, Viper. No, those do not exist. You get a call sign because you screwed up.
Okay.
That's the number one choice. It's to remind you of something you messed up on, and you generally don't get another call sign unless you screw up even more.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Sometimes you might get lucky and it'll be a play on words on your name or some funny little pop culture reference from the time. But yeah, nobody gets to pick their call signs. They're all issued based on stuff you've done. And yeah, most of the time they tend to be not very flattering. So Viper, that was not his call sign, but when he got to his squadron on the ship, he noticed that someone leaving had the call sign Viper. And he's like, that's a nice call sign. So he just went around telling everyone that was his call sign and acting like that was his call sign. And he actually managed to get it to stick.
That's awesome.
Until, of course, eventually someone, figured it out. And then he had a call sign review board, and he is now known as Diaper, as last I have information.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
All right. So the plot is as such as it is with this movie. United States Naval Aviator Lieutenant Pete Maverick Mitchell and his Radar Intercept Officer, Lieutenant LTJG Nick Goose Bradshaw, are stationed aboard the USS Enterprise, from which they fly the F-14A Tomcat. During an interception with two hostile MiG-28 aircraft portrayed by USN F-5s, Maverick gets missile lock on one, while the other hostile aircraft locks onto Maverick's wingman Cougar. While Maverick drives off the remaining MiG-28, Cougar is too shaken to land, and Maverick, defying orders, shepherds him back to the carrier. Cougar gives up his wings, citing his newborn child that he's never seen. CAG Stinger sends Maverick and Goose to attend Top Gun, the naval fighter weapons school at Naval Air Station Miramar. At the bar the day before Top Gun starts, Maverick, assisted by Goose, unsuccessfully approaches a woman. Maverick learns the next day that she is Charlotte Charlie Blackwood, an astrophysicist and civilian Top Gun instructor. Charlie later becomes interested in Maverick upon learning of his inverted maneuver with the MiG-28, which disproves U.S. intelligence on the enemy aircraft's performance. During Maverick's first training hop, he defeats instructor LCDR Rick Jester Heatherly, but through reckless flying breaks a major rule of engagement, immediately followed by by flying by the control tower, buzzing it at top speeds, and is reprimanded by Chief Instructor CDR Mike Viper Metcalf.
Commander CDR.
Privately, Jester confides that he admires Maverick's skills, but doesn't know if he would trust him as a teammate in combat. Maverick also becomes a rival to top student Lieutenant Tom Iceman Kazansky, who considers Maverick's attitude foolish and his flying dangerous. I am dangerous. As Maverick's tendency to abandon his team and pursue reckless objectives make him unsafe to fly with. In class, Charlie also objects to Maverick's aggressive tactics, but privately admits to him that she admires his flying and omitted it from her report to hide her feelings for him. The two begin a romantic relationship, because of course they do. During another training Hop 19, Maverick abandons his wingman Hollywood to chase Viper. Viper admits he is impressed with his flying abilities, but Maverick is defeated when Viper maneuvers Maverick into a position from which his wingman Jester can shoot down Maverick from behind, demonstrating the value of teamwork over individual prowess.
Yep.
There's your lesson, everyone. Jester publicly tells Maverick that his flying is excellent, but he should never leave his wingman. Maverick and Iceman, now direct competitors for the Top Gun trophy, chase an A4 in a later training engagement, Hop 31. Since part of the scoring in every flight is the course is the time taken for every dogfight to conclude, and after noticing that Iceman is pulling time during his chase after the A4 so that his total score is the course will remain higher than Maverick's, Maverick pressures Iceman to break off his engagement with the A4. They are both chasing so they can shoot it down himself. But Maverick's F-14 flies through the jet wash of Iceman's aircraft and suffers a flameout of both engines, going into an unrecoverable flat spin. Maverick and Goose eject, but Goose hits the jettisoned aircraft canopy head first and is killed. Although the Board of Inquiry clears Maverick of responsibility for Goose's death, he is overcome by guilt and his flying skills diminish. Charlie and others attempt to console him, but Maverick considers retiring. He seeks advice from Viper, who reveals that he served with Maverick's father, Duke Mitchell, on the USS Enterprise and was in the Vietnam War era battle in which Mitchell was killed. Contrary to official reports, which faulted Mitchell, Viper reveals classified information that proves Mitchell died heroically and informs Maverick that he can succeed if he can regain his self-confidence. Maverick chooses to graduate, although Iceman wins the Top Gun trophy. During the graduation party, Viper and Jester call in the newly graduated aviators with the orders to deploy. Iceman, Hollywood, and Maverick are ordered to immediately return to the Enterprise to deal with a crisis situation, providing air support to rescue the USS Layton, a disabled communication ship that has drifted into hostile waters. Maverick and Merlin, Kurger's former RIO, are assigned as backup.
Pronounced Rio, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rio. His name is Rio, Ronnie James Dio. Are assigned as backup for the F-14s flown by Iceman in Hollywood, despite Iceman's reservation over Maverick's state of mind. The subsequent hostile engagement with 6 MiGs sees Hollywood shot down. Maverick is scrambled alone due to a catapult failure and nearly retreats after encountering circumstances similar to those that caused Goose's death. Upon finally rejoining Iceman, the two are still badly outnumbered, but Maverick vocally refuses to leave Iceman without a wingman and manages to shoot down 3 MiGs. Iceman, shifting to offense, also shoots one down, which forces the other 2 to flee. Upon their triumphant return to Enterprise, Iceman and Maverick share newfound respect for each other, and Maverick throws Goose's dog tags overboard, having come to terms with himself and his friend's death. Offered any assignment he chooses, Maverick decides to return to Top Gun as an instructor. At a bar in Miramar, Maverick and Charlie reunite. All right. So let's talk about this movie, David. I'm going to give you, we can go back and forth. I am definitely going to be taking sort of the negative view of this movie, and you can counter what I'm saying. We don't have to necessarily wait for the other one to finish. I think my biggest issue with this movie is that it's half a good movie. Like, obviously, and I know what happened here. They probably wrote the original draft and it was just military focus, and there was probably not a tremendous amount of like focus on the romance. And then like they looked at this and they were like, there is nothing human about this script. There's nothing to appeal to general audiences. Either you like watching dogfights or you don't, and that is not a recipe for a successful movie. And I guarantee you, in the rewrite, they upped the stuff with Tom Cruise and Kelly McGillis. And Tom Cruise is a good actor, obviously. Kelly McGillis is a good actor. It's not that they didn't have sexual chemistry, but nothing that goes on between them is particularly interesting. Their romance lacks, in my opinion, any kind of on-screen sizzle, any real emotional depth or resonance. It's just boring. And it's half the movie. And it causes the pacing of the movie to be wildly all over the place. So when there's flying happening, when there's stuff with the military, that's the best stuff in the movie, and it's great. And I agree with everybody on planet Earth who's seen this movie that, yeah, Top Gun is cool. Now give me the edit where Kelly McGillis isn't in this anymore. She's just in the classroom scene, and that's all you ever see. We're like, oh, take out Berlin, and every time it plays, it's like Wonder Woman's theme in Justice League.
As I say, it's a great movie, but it was made for the next chapter button. Every time you start to hear "Take My Breath Away," hit the next chapter. Yeah.
Take out all the stuff with Tom Cruise and Kelly McGillis, maybe after their first initial bar scene, because I think setting that up is fine. But the rest of it's just boring and flat, and it feels compulsory, like it had to be there. So they're like, just film the scenes, the actor's natural charisma will carry us and it'll be fine. And it's like, nope, you have to put some effort into this stuff or your whole movie falls apart. And so it's a very uneven drag of a movie at times. I wanted to comment real quick on the use of Berlin's Take My Breath Away. It's great. I love that song. I love Berlin in general, but Take My Breath Away is a great song, and it does match. It's probably the only thing that adds flavor to the romance scenes. Here's my problem. I made the joke about like Wonder Woman's theme. It is all over the movie. It's like Kelly McGillis can't walk to take a piss without hearing Berlin's Take My Breath Away. Enough already. Play it once. Once. Have them have sex to it, and then we're done with Berlin, unless they're going, unless they're going on the metro. Okay, stop already. They used it way too much, and then they would only use part of the song. Like, it got ridiculous after a while. It was really distracting. So I'm gonna give you a chance. So I talked about pacing. I talked about the romance scenes not being great and the unevenness of the film. Your witness.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
All right, good night, everybody.
Yeah, there we go. But the two reasons I can think of that is, one, it could have been a production note. We need a romance story for all the girlfriends and significant others are going to be dragged out to this thing, because of course women can't like movies about airplanes.
No.
But the only other thing I can think of is, like, it is really expensive to fly these jets.
Sure.
Like, it costs like thousands of dollars an hour for like one F-14, probably even close to $10,000 or more an hour.
So real quick, in 1986 money, the budget on this was $15 million, which I think it's a little higher than the average was at that time. It certainly wasn't $100 million. 50 million is still a good chunk of change. By the way, wildly successful, 357 million in worldwide gross.
Yeah. Now the Navy will be a bit generous, and if they like you, they will try and see if they can get you the shot you want doing something they would be doing anyway.
Sure.
Yeah. But if you say, I want you to specifically to do this, this, and this, and they have to specifically go do that, the studio has to pay for it. The American taxpayer does not.
Right. So maybe buzzing the tower.
Movie. Yeah, that kind of thing. So like maybe like they were on their way back to base. It's like, could you do a flyaway of the tower? Like, sure. It's not going to cost us any more money to do that. Right. Just set up the cameras and there you go. So maybe they just didn't have it in their budget to do any more flying stuff than they did. So like, okay, we've only got half a movie here with this footage.
Right.
We need something to pad out the script, and romance is cheap.
Yep.
So that could have been. I don't know specifically. I haven't actually gone too much into the behind the scenes making of the film, but certainly that could be part of it. But yeah, like I agree. The romance stuff is forgettable, not really that interesting. I mean, singing "You've Lost That Loving Feeling" is iconic. That
sure.
Scene. And, as creepy as it is, Maverick following her into the washroom, that probably has a bit of...
Boy, has that not held up over the years.
Yeah, it is not held up. Don't get me wrong.
That women's bathroom, and I'm like, whoo!
Oh, boy, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that was even that good to do back then, but someone thought that was a good idea.
Somewhere over the course of 20 to 30 years, men's determination to woo women has been looked upon poorly. And has been framed in not so great ways. And so, but back then, that was considered masculine. That is what you did as a man trying to pursue a woman. You literally pursued them. Maybe even into the women's room. One never knows. It's kind of romantic.
Yeah, I still think that's a pretty rare one. But yeah. yeah, I get that they weren't going for creepy with that. But yeah, that scene has not aged well. But it is a memorable scene.
Oh, yeah.
Put it that way. Yeah, but yeah, like everything about this movie, it's if you are into jets and military aviation, this is your jam. It doesn't get any better than this, at least not till Friday, we hope. And
heard nothing but good things about Maverick, so
yeah, same here. But it's all movies are shot like that. That like there's been many imitations of Top Gun. But I don't think it's ever really been equaled that much. Like it had the story works, the scenes are fantastic. Them flying, the way they shoot the actors in the cockpits is
so. Your major defense of this movie is that sure it's flawed, but its positives outweigh its negatives in the net total.
Yeah, like I can't think of any other movie that does this as good as it does. Like this is the gold standard. I mean, sorry, Iron Eagle, like you're great in your own crazy way, but it's just doesn't quite work this like and the pop culture effects of this film have just reverberated.
Oh yeah,
over a long time. Like you can still quote this movie. Like in fact, if you go to actual Top Gun, there is a $20 fine every time you quote a line from the movie Top Gun.
I feel the need. Shut up.
No, you're buying the drinks that night. If you say that, yeah, like naval recruitment jumped up 500% after the movie hit theaters. Even in the Navy now, they still watch it on carriers. They have like some code word for which room they're showing Top Gun in. So the people like for all of its over the topness and craziness and inaccuracy, it is still beloved by the people that do the actual job.
Right. I wonder how many of them like just utterly tune out though when they're not flying.
Oh, I'm sure that if the actual pilots were watching this movie, well, I'm sure like everyone's seen Top Gun before joining up. They would be picking it apart relentlessly.
Mm-hmm.
The peanut gallery is alive and well in aviation.
Well, I just like I said, when they're dealing with the military stuff, when they're not even just when they're flying, but even like Maverick getting chewed out in the office for being reckless. There's a handful of scenes in the locker room where him and Val Kilmer go head to head.
The locker room is completely unrealistic. They don't all shower together in the locker room. That was
Okay.
that was something made for ease of storytelling.
But I mean, there's great tension. There's more sexual tension between Val Kilmer and Tom Cruise than there is between Kelly McGillis and Tom Cruise.
Yeah. I think there's more sexual tension between all of the fighter pilot characters than between any of the men and women in the movie.
Oi, poor Mick Ryan. But yeah, I like. So there's some stuff in the locker room where they're like, "You're dangerous," and he's like, "Yeah, I am dangerous." Alrighty. There's a handful of scenes of him being chewed out in an office. There's the classroom scene, and of course, the volleyball scene.
Yeah, I knew we had to get there.
I remember. So, let me be honest here. I had never seen Top Gun before last year in my life.
Okay.
Never, ever. I wasn't interested. I didn't care. I knew it was a cultural touchstone. I obviously knew of like, I feel the need for speed was in that, Highway to a Danger Zone is from that. I didn't realize that Berlin's Take My Breath Away was from Top Gun, or that apparently any awards this thing was nominated and or won for was all having to do with soundtracks and special effects.
It does have a very good soundtrack.
None of it for acting, none of it for story, none of it for anything, like that would relate to like the main part of the picture. It's all special effects and all soundtrack, which I think is hysterical. So like I said, you can't get away from Top Gun in the culture, but by the same token, it wasn't something that interested me personally. So I never watched it, and it never had a sequel. It didn't spawn a franchise. They didn't produce a television show. There was no cartoon. There were no toys. I had no way of relating to this movie, and I don't particularly care about airplanes. So I just that's not the kid that I was. So I just never watched Top Gun. I watched it for the first time last summer. They did a $5 showing at our theater, and nice. I went by myself. I left my kids were not interested, and after having seen the movie, I was like, oof. They can skip this one. Like I'm taking my son to go see Maverick, but he does not need to see the original.
Yeah, I agree with that. From what I understand of your kids.
Yeah. So I remember thinking, of course, everyone, I'm going to see Top Gun, and of course, everyone I say that to write you back like, yeah, that movie is so gay. I'm like, all right. So yeah, the locker room stuff, the volleyball stuff, but I mean, like, I don't even think when they were making the movie, like there was that thought. They was just like, no. This is manly men being manly on screen.
Yeah, it's a very change in the cultural perception. Yeah, I agree. Right back then, it was like, look at all these tough, fit guys playing volleyball and being awesome, and now it's just like, oh, that's so gay.
Yeah.
Well, it was like when Vladimir Putin, when he like did that, that photo shoot where he's wearing he's wearing the combat pants and nothing on the top, and
right.
And it was like, oh geez, this is so gay, and it's like, no, like he's trying to look strong and tough. That's the image he's portraying, and that's probably how it's being taken. I didn't ask around in Russia what they thought of it, but it's just that image has totally shifted in our in our culture, where unless you're like Chris Hemsworth or Chris Evans,
or Henry Cavill,
being shirtless and oily, that's now considered gay.
Well, it is just, let's just take a minute to acknowledge that, like, that change in the culture, like you say it, and it's almost like it taken as read, like, yeah, of course, the change in the culture. But I mean, when you really think about it, like, what all had to happen for us to get to that point? We talk about this in our group chat, and I don't know how you feel about it, because you tend to have lost your patience with some of our people and don't engage with them anymore, which is your right, and I don't blame you. But there is a conversation that comes up about the diminishment, the marginalization of traditional masculinity.
Yeah.
And so you can take a movie like Top Gun, and here they are showing muscled men doing manly things. And that is what, that's why it works as a recruitment video. That is why people were wanting to go see this movie, at least in part, was like, let's look at men do men stuff. And, here we are in 2022, and the same men stuff is when we say it's gay, what are we really saying? We're saying not that it is attractive to homosexuals. I'm sure some think it's fantastic, but whatever you're attracted to, if you see it on screen, is going to be fantastic. That goes without saying.
Yeah, I think it's like the sexualization of men is viewed as a gay thing, because apparently we don't consider that women might actually be watching too.
Right. It's so funny you say it that way. It's
like when you see Megan Fox open up the car hood and Michael Bay just basically fucks her with the camera, they go, "This is so lesbian."
That's called the male gaze, Dave.
Yeah.
But you're right. No one says that's so lesbian. No one says that's so gay. But I mean, like, the word gay, right? It obviously is a colloquial term for homosexuals, but it's also an insult, and it's an insult to say someone is not masculine. Someone is not portraying the traditional elements of masculinity. So, like, you're drinking with your friends, and and one friend decides he's not going to drink that. Like, well, okay, faggot, you're being gay, and that has nothing to do with his sexuality. It's you're not being masculine. You're not being a man.
You're not meeting these stereotypical criteria for what is considered to be manly or a man. Yeah,
and so now evolve, and here we are, 40 years later, and we look at the same material that is men doing men stuff, and we're like, this is, I don't know. You say it's gay, and we just use gay as a pejorative for not manly. Like, men doing men stuff is not manly. Is that where we are in the culture? It's a really like a circular thing to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a bit strange because, I think they don't make stuff like that anymore for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe I could think of like Chris Evans, Captain America. Like he was sort of allowed to be that sort of traditional strong man type. But I see there, like, it's not everywhere, but it is a noticeable thing where you do have these sort of films where, like, the men are starting to being portrayed as overly emotional, dealing with trauma and ineffective, and they need whatever woman who is in a position of authority to come in and fix whatever they screw up.
If flying fighter jets, if wearing a military uniform, if pursuing a woman consensually, if having sex,
I think this is bad. You should see Firebirds, which is basically Top Gun with Nick Cage and helicopters.
Okay,
which is actually pretty awesome.
If playing sports, shirtless or otherwise, is not masculine, is not manly, then what is? Like, what is masculine in 2022? And I think because there's such a political, social desire to minimize masculinity for whatever ulterior motives there are, that no one can answer that question anymore.
It's sort of become a taboo subject. What is masculine? What is feminine? We don't want to talk about those things there are those that don't want to talk about those things, which is really sad, because what is art if not the exploration of what it is to be human?
Right. And then the other side of it is you have the phrase toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
So everything I just said, someone would, if we have somebody from, academia who would come into this podcast, we're like, well, all of those things are toxic masculinity. Pursuing her into the bathroom, right? Not the best example, but shirtless volleyball. Like, you got me there, copper. But like shirtless volleyball, it's toxic. Fighter jets, military, war, aggression. It's all toxic masculinity. And I'm like, what do the vast majority of women want men to be then? Like, just, hairy women? I don't, like, what do you want from us? What do you want from us, women?
Yeah, I have noticed the opinion foisted that it is that this sort of, the toxic masculinity call it the feminist movement, whatever, where they say we want men to be more caring and sensitive and stylish and effeminate, and then why can't we get any men that we like? And the sort of idea that somewhere in like the back of our brains, it's like the manly man is the man that women want. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's a whole other podcast, but that certainly is an aspect of things.
I think there is sort of, with the pendulum swinging somewhat back in the other direction, is, well, we don't want you to be women, but could you be less jerks? Like, is there not a middle ground?
Yeah, I think there's personally, I think there's a bit of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, shall we say, with that.
That is very true. So back to Top Gun.
Yes, back to Top Gun. This is a much deeper discussion than we thought we would be on discussing Top Gun. But
I needed to kill at least 10 minutes for TikTok.
Okay.
Let's talk about Kelly McGillis's teeth.
Okay. I did not notice this.
They feature prominently in this film. There's a lot of close-ups. This is one of my criticisms of the craft. The principal photography in this movie is great with the military stuff, but part of my issue with, I think, with the romance things is it's so weirdly shot. They were obsessed with close-ups of Kelly McGillis's face. I mean, it looks like freaking this, man. I'm Kelly McGillis. Like, it's ridiculous. And it was like really made me uncomfortable. I remember the first time I watched this, and I'm like, and they kept like, close up of her face. She's perfectly framed, and because she's got these big white teeth and she's smiling big and she's so pretty, it's just like, and it's like, oh my god, put your teeth away, madam. And they don't do that with anybody else in this movie. Like, even when they do a close up of Tom Cruise's face, it's not like it doesn't feel like he's coming at you like Max Headroom or Master Control from Tron. Like, his head isn't giant on screen. It was a weird, like, how do you watch the dailies and not see what I saw? I'm just a film snob. I'm just an amateur guy watching films and talks about it on a podcast. If I'm picking that up, how did you miss this watching dailies? I ask you, David, how could you miss it?
Well, in all honesty, I had not thought of that until you mentioned it.
But I'm right.
Yeah, but I can tell you, every time I watch Top Gun from now on, I'm going to be looking for it, and I'll probably see it. So thanks for that, Mark.
That's what I'm here for.
Granted, I tend to skip most of the scenes with Kelly McGillis anyway.
do you just have like a Top Gun edit at home? It's just like none of the romance stuff. It's just all Highway to a Danger Zone.
No, but that's kind of how the film works best.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let me kick it over to you. What else about this movie would you say in defense of it to someone like me who's struggling with it?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it is basically a sports movie. They've just sort of subbed out the big game with fighter jets doing dogfights, which is fine. But yeah, like the whole locker room antics. Again, they don't have a locker room. They don't like hit the showers after they go up. I mean, they shower at some point, but yeah, you just you get back in your flight suit and you go and you debrief a lot. Okay. Debrief as in like talk about the flight, not as in removing clothing. Yeah, I had to make sure, given the content of this conversation, I was clear on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no Top Gun trophy. That was what the Navy fought against tooth and nail to have removed from the film. Everything else, they're like, we can live with this, but this is the one thing where, no, that there is no Top Gun trophy. There is no competition. It's pass fail. Everyone's in it together. Like, that's it. Because for the exact reasons as... Yeah,
so you don't do it that way. There's no drama in this film other than him dealing with the guilt of killing Goose.
Yeah, because if they did have a Top Gun trophy with the way that fighter pilot personalities work, the movie would have basically happened. Like, they would have killed each other trying to get that trophy, and that's not a good strategy. So
no. Why is the budget skyrocketing? This we keep killing a lot of pilots. Like,
and a fighter pilot is an expensive thing to train.
Sure.
And the thing about Top Gun, this isn't basic training. This is advanced training. This is like going for your master's, so all these pilots are already experienced pilots by the time they go to Top Gun. Okay. So yeah, that's a lot of money you'd be burning. But that's more, again, getting into like how this differs from reality. But I just think it's that kind of it's like the perfect type of 80s cheese, like from the soundtrack to the dialogue to the ridiculous story, the synth that pops in at times. And yeah, it's you don't see many movies like it. And I think that's kind of what makes it very interesting is
it is very one of a kind in that sense.
Yeah, the field of aviation movies is already pretty small. And the field of like modern fighter jet movies is incredibly tiny.
Well, okay, so we're just having sort of a general conversation now. I think I've made my prosecution pretty clear. But I think talking about awards and whatnot, nominations, the stuff with the dogfighting apparently is like universally acclaimed as some of the best filming of such things in the history of film, which I think is pretty incredible. And I remember watching it. I watched it over the course of the last day or so on Netflix, and then like I said, I watched it for the first time last summer, and I was pretty amazed. Like, movies is magic, as they say, and so sometimes you wonder, like, how did they get that shot?
Yeah, I know they did do some model work. Like sometimes when you see the missile flying off the rails, that's a model with a basic model rocket off it. They actually got in trouble because the Navy said we only cleared you to fire one missile for filming.
But that's the thing, like, if it's done well, it's kind of like the trench run in Star Wars where they did that all with models. But occasionally they'd have to, cut to a close up of Luke Skywalker, and so that's all the stuff that has to be filmed. And 77, 86. You have some special effects, but you certainly don't have computer generated imagery. So these are shots.
Yeah. I mean, there was some compositing done, like when they do the whole, insulter scene where like Maverick's flying inverted over the MiG, and they're like canopy to canopy. They would not have done that in real life. They would not have allowed those planes to get that close together. That would have been way too dangerous, even if it's done as part of a stunt with the best pilots they had. So that was probably they filmed the Tomcat inverted and the MiG, flying right way up, and then they just probably sandwiched the two together. But yeah, overall there were a lot of practical effects.
Yeah, I wanted to just point out that if nothing else, I can appreciate the principal photography in this thing and the action sequences. Those are all really well done. The last thing I want to mention, and I'll give you the final word and we'll be done with this. Tom Cruise at his most cheeky.
I'm not sure if was this Tom Cruise's breakout role, or was he already kind of a name by then? It's certainly one of his more famous roles.
Oh yeah, it's besides this Mission Impossible. But I'm trying to figure out like where this was in relation to like Cocktail, because that's the other one I was thinking about.
I mean, someone once made the joke that a lot of the films that he made around that time were pretty much the same plot line as Cocktail. Cocktail, a young hotshot, what do they call that? Bartender, drink mixer, mixologist is like shown the ropes by a more experienced mentor. And Days of Thunder, a young hotshot race car driver shown the ropes by a more experienced mentor. And
so here's what he's been in up to.
Cool, but yeah.
So he starts in the 81 with Endless Love, then he does Taps, then he does The Outsiders, then Losing It, and I think Risky Business in 1983 is the one everyone remembers him in.
Yeah, that might be sort of his first one that became noticed, because I don't know any of those other films.
Right. And then he's in All the Right Moves, which I believe is another sports movie. Then he's in Legend, and then Top Gun. And after Top Gun is The Color of Money, and then Cocktail. So, again, with the possible exception of Risky Business, I feel like Top Gun is Tom Cruise at that time. And, of course, this will change over time. But at that point, this might have been his most, I use the word cheeky, his most flirty. Like, there's a lot of, like, hey, babe. There's a lot of that going on in this movie. Like, to the point where the second time I watched it, I was like, I'm a little uncomfortable now. like we just had the whole 20-minute conversation about toxic masculinity. There's a bit of like drippy smarminess with him, and it's like I get like where they were trying to go for genuine with him, and they were trying to again, this is 1986, and that's supposed to be a manly man, a woman's man. He's projecting confidence, and he's got a swagger about him. He's a dangerous fighter pilot. It comes across as a little seedy at times.
Yeah. Well, again, these things change over time. Like, think of like a Jane Austen movie with how dating works in those, where it's all this sort of coy flirting and chaperoning and back and forth, and we would go crazy if we had to do that these days. And then you had the more by today's these.
Can you imagine Can you imagine during Jane Austen's time sending a dick pic?
Yeah, I could not. Though I almost want
sketch artist.
Yeah, get a
sketch artist. Yeah. it's an ordeal.
Yeah, and then so when you get to Top Gun, it looks a bit more, by modern standards, a bit forced, like non-consensual-esque. And of course now it's just, if you do anything other than swipe right, you're pretty much a sexual predator. But again, like, times change, right?
So talking to people about dating apps and whatnot, and looking at like women's profiles, and so many of them are like, please start a conversation. Here's a thought. Have a conversation. Mm-hmm. Because the other side of this is I've heard people talk about, like, guys like hi, and the next thing they do is dick pic, and it's like, I'm not saying we would have never have gotten there, but please maybe ask what my favorite movie is first. Yeah, like I kind of found my wife just kind of when Tinder was becoming a thing, so I never really got into that. Yeah. That sort of level of online dating thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would say just spitballing here. If you want a guy to start a conversation with you, give him a lot of stuff to work with. What movies do you like? What books do you like? If you read books, sports, give him something where he can say, oh, hey, you like this thing, I like this thing too. And if it's just like, I like dogs, well, even that would be a lot. But here, I do want to spend just a minute on this, because we're talking about Tom Cruise in this movie and Kelly McGillis, and he hits on her at a bar. Yeah. Hey, let's walk through this. He hits on her at a bar. He talks to her at a bar. She then leaves to go back to her date or whoever it is she's with at the bar. And then he's like, oh, struck out. And then he goes to class the next day, and it turns out the girl that he struck out with is the instructor. Yikes. Yeah. And then there's still a bit of like contentious flirting there. Like, I'm not going to listen to you, teacher. That kind of thing in the classroom. And I can't remember how we got to them finally getting together. Like, I remember there was an elevator scene too. That would be a bit right. And I think that same night I skipped the bathroom thing, but he does walk. It does during the bar scene walk into the bathroom with her. Yeah, and then I think it was when she chewed him out when they were doing the debriefing for the one where he I forget which flight it was, but anyway, she's chewing him out, and then he chases her down like, I was right, I won. Why did you chew me out? And she's like, because I can't admit that I've fallen for you, or something like that. And then they go back to her place for the sex scene. So think about like that, and now think about like modern dating like that. Does that even happen anymore? Can a man approach a woman at a bar and it not turn into a hate crime? Like, I'm not sure. Work? Yeah, I haven't really been there in a long time. It made me laugh. It's like watching a movie from like 100 years ago. Ooh, it's a Model T. I haven't seen one of those. That's cool. Yeah. Well, another thing about this film that really did, like, we talk about the stars in terms of like Tom Cruise, Val Kilmer, Meg Ryan, and whatnot. Anthony Edwards. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like the F-14 Tomcat was also a breakout star here. Like, that plane has a huge following. Mm-hmm. People just love it. Did you ever play Afterburner as a kid? Not so much. I knew of it. I actually I bought like the old. They actually made a PC flight sim Top Gun game back in the 90s. I think it was called Top Gun Fire at Will or something. It was a somewhat altered version of it, but it was basically Maverick goes to Top Gun. I think now with Merlin as his Rio, because they weren't doing the Goose thing. But and you'd have to like do missions. I remember I couldn't get past the 5th mission. It was too tough for me at the time. But all right. But like when I was a kid, like, I loved the F-14. I read books about it, and it's a cool plane. Has the F-14 been mothballed since then, or is it still in operation? Yeah, it's been struck from service. Well, it's been retired because like it just you get old, and Navy planes, especially being out at sea in the salt water, it kind of gets into things. There's lots of corrosion and so on, and just times have changed with how air warfare is fought. Like when the Soviet Union fell, it stopped being big nuclear wars and mass fleet and became more smaller proxy wars, Middle East, that sort of thing, where you didn't need a dedicated fleet interceptor like that. And again, now Like I think like bombers are more in use, or helicopters.
Well, they kind of
What are
switched.
we doing? What exactly are we doing these days with jets? You know?
Yeah. Well, they switched more to like multi-role fighters, like the F-18 Hornet, where they can sort of almost equally drop bombs or fight air to air. But yeah, we haven't really had a like good solid air war with. I think the term is like peer or near peer adversaries, where it's usually an Air Force flying previous generation Soviet era jets that just the modern stuff just steamrolls over.
Well, Dave, you wanted to be here. Any last words?
Yeah. Well, just to finish up with the F-14s, Iran actually does still have some F-14s. They bought some from the U.S. before the revolution, and that makes the F-14 world a bit interesting. Getting information because they're still a little wary of intelligence getting out to Iran or them getting parts and information, which is kind of interesting. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Top Gun is a perfect movie and a shining example of cinema as an art form. It's
not going to throw yourself on the floor and demand that I appreciate this and then say that you're. I don't want. No. Chris is so good. I don't want to beat him up. But you're not going to sit there and be like, this was the thing I liked when I was 7, and therefore it's the best.
Yeah, it's not for everyone, but yeah, if you like aviation, especially military aviation, especially naval aviation, this is the movie for you. Like I say, even the Navy, people who are in the Navy, people who know all the things that are wrong with this movie, still have a soft spot for it, as near as I can tell. And like I say, there aren't many films like it, and I don't think any other film I've seen in that genre has ever really stood up to it. In comparison, it's kind of like the Lord of the Rings of fighter pilot movies.
All right, the Lord of the Rings of fighter pilot. We put it on a box.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is our prosecution and defense of Top Gun. A little late tonight. I was busy. You were busy. But we got it done, and it'll be up tomorrow at some point. If you're watching this, it's already up. Tomorrow at 9:00 sharp, David Wright and Melissa Radulich will be joining me to talk Downton Abbey 2, A New Era.
A movie with no airplanes whatsoever.
Not a single one. On Wednesday, there'll be an unspoken issues called Extreme Justice 0, according to Jesse. And then the Metal Hammer of Doom will be reviewing Watain, The Agony and Ecstasy of Watain. On Thursday, the Four Kings of Boxing will have we'll look at Sugar Ray Leonard versus Tommy Hearns 2, the sequel even. So that's what we got going on there. And then on Friday, there'll be a source material. Jesse will be dropping Mad Balls. And then myself, Christine, and Al Sedano, in theory, will be reviewing DMZ, which is based on a comic book. It's a 4-episode limited series on HBO Max from DC Comics. So check that out. And then, hey, Sci-Fi Month wraps up here. We'll have a Tripped Up Trivia. Our second ever sci-fi trivia will be airing on May 29th. I'm a little behind on putting up shows on our website, but currently available in podcast form or on an audio player on YouTube is an Iron Eagle commentary I did a few years ago when I was in the hospital getting cancer treatment. I was still podcasting while I was in the hospital doing cancer treatment because I'm fucking dedicated. But me and Pat Mullen did a alternative commentary for Iron Eagle that never made the W2M feed that we have now. So that was re-aired. And we also re-aired our review of The Jungle Book from 2016. So that was fun. I got to talk about how, I took my kid there, and I always enjoy listening to stuff from 2015 and 2016 and rambling incessantly about taking my children to the movies at the time or to the drive-in or whatever.
I think we had originally planned to do like a retrospective of all 4 Iron Eagle movies, but I guess that got lost in the shuffle.
It got cut for a number of reasons, not the least of which was some of them aren't even available for streaming.
Yeah.
I just have to buy them on DVD. You know what also I have to buy on DVD? Because I keep telling people that they should watch this movie and then it's not available to stream anywhere. You have to buy it on DVD. Pool Hall Junkies. Can you believe it?
I cannot believe it. Jeez. Film industry, what's going on?
Why can't we get
content?
Who owns the rights to Pool Hall Junkies that we can't get this streamed anywhere? What the hell, man? Is it, why can't people see adult Ricky Schroeder try to, beat somebody over the head with a pool cue? Anyway.
Hopefully someday we'll be able to talk all the Iron Eagle movies, but not this day.
Not today is not that day. All right. Anything else, David, before we go?
No, yeah, I think it's just Downton Abbey tomorrow, and I think that's it for Maeve and me on this network.
Yeah,
we almost made it.
How'd you feel being the star of Maydays here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network?
Busy, a little bit of pressure, but it's also been a lot of fun, and I'm still married, so.
Did you tell her like this is the last one? I'm sorry.
Yeah, tomorrow is the last one, and then I think I only have Maverick for next month, though. I think we might be doing Lightyear and Chip and Dale as well.
Yes, Lightyear and Chip and Dale were combined to make Alexis not kill herself instead of watching Father of the Bride. And also just I needed to move some stuff around. What happened was Everything Everywhere All at Once, the digital release got delayed again, so I had to move that around. And I was like, you know what, Alexis doesn't want to watch Father of the Bride, so we'll combine these two, we'll combine these three, and it'll be fine. All right, folks, so that is it. I have to pee. So thank you for joining us here on Trial. He's David, I'm Mark. Be well, be safe, and behave.